Hi, everyone. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm here today with Armando Salas, the cinematographer of the six-part Netflix biographical crime drama Griselda, that tells the story of the notorious Colombian drug queenpin, Griselda Blanco. It features Sofia Vergara in the title role. Armando, let's just jump right into it. The look you give to Griselda feels stunningly period, like you shot the thing in 1978 and the footage was found 46 years later and put on television. That was obviously intentional.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time thinking about the look and feel and creating, something that was definitely based on reference material, but was our own unique twist on that time period. We wanted to create a unique world that the audience bought into and, lived in the reality of this character. And, many of the most sensational and out there events in the story are the ones that are based on true events. So we wanted the audience to buy in early, to feel absorbed into the world of Griselda Blanco.
Yeah, in this case, really, truth is really stranger than fiction. Um, I mean, but what you did cinematography wise, the whole thing just screams late 70s, early 80s Miami. Uh, uh, Talk about the impact that still photography and Polaroid film in particular had on your cinematography process on this project.
We were referencing still photographers like Andy Sweet, who has a great book, photographs of Miami of that time period. But those essentially were more inspirational in terms of finding locations, set dressing, vehicles. One of the inspirations for the actual look development on my end was these Polaroids that Andres Baez, the director, was taking in pre-production. And, we started essentially staging the scenes of the show on Director Scout using his Polaroid cameras, and we picked and choose the best of those images. And I started to see that the Polaroids were doing this really great job of distilling the image down and had a very painterly effect. And then I took the top 20 images to my colorist, and we started creating a LUT designed around the look of those Polaroids. And that was kind of the starting point of the conversation of the look and feel of our digital film negative for the show.
It's so interesting because, as I was watching it before I knew any of this, Armando, I'm thinking this whole thing looks kind of like a Polaroid, because it didn't, Polaroid was kind of magic way back in the day. You're too young to know this. But I remember way back in the day, when you could, before anything, before the word digital was on anybody's lips, you would take a shot and then 60 seconds later or 2 minutes later or whatever, you had the development. It was in your hand and it was magic. But as I'm watching Griselda, I'm just thinking this whole thing really does have that. It immediately, no matter, even though it was instant, it still looked like something that was shot, I don't know, like 4 years ago. It's just instantly dated looking. And I thought this whole thing really does look like a Polaroid. So it's so interesting when I found out that was kind of, sort of what you were using to create this color palette. And visually, it really has that sort of faded, grainy tone. I sort of compared it to what Alexander Payne achieved with his film, The Holdovers, last year. Did you see it?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that film is much more subdued. What part of the magic of Polaroids is that sometimes they're wildly beautiful and sometimes they're wildly unsuccessful, right? And so there's a unpredictability to it, and I was using that also as a motivation to the lighting. I didn't want the lighting to be too manicured. It was really a lot bolder and a lot freer than what I had done in the past on other projects. And again, that was part of that spontaneity, that magic of this, all inspired about this woman using her cunning and wits in this hyper sexist, violent man's world. And she's always one step away from failure, but manages to succeed. And again, that trying to hold on to that joy for life, and really taking advantage of the situation, and letting those moments inspire the approach to the lighting, to the compositions, to the use of camera movement.
So you discovered the whole Polaroid idea though, with while you were still in pre-production, right?
Correct. Yeah.
This was not something you thought of in the middle. You realized,
No.
and as you said, it could be beautiful or horrible. So was it like a certain percentage of your Polaroids that you say, wow, that's really the look? Probably 85 to 90% of them were always kind of yuck.
Yeah, I mean, you have a 15 to 20% success rate on great looking images, and um, there's a tonality that's really beautiful on skin tone, but then there's like these peaks and valleys in color. So you have these saturated pops of certain frequencies of color that the Polaroid dyes can actually reproduce, and much of the rest of the colors kind of fade into the background. And so, again, it's a very painterly approach, a very uh, this idea of unifying the looks. We had all these incredible contributions from set dressing, from wardrobe, from production design, and my responsibility was to unify that all with the camera, with this very distinct approach to the image.
So, excuse me, wardrobe and production design and everybody, you guys, the crew people, the people that are in charge of the crew, like yourself with cinematography, you all kind of you get together and huddle and have meetings and discuss and sort of talk about a unified look.
Yes, we have about 4 months of meetings prior to day one of rolling. Um, and some of that is agreeing on tonalities of color and approach, and and then some of that is feedback on my end of shooting wardrobe and paint swatches and different textures, and showing them how this look will actually render those colors, because some colors will be rendered faithfully and some colors will be wildly different than what you see with your eye. And so that way everyone has this armed with this information going into production. On top of that, we had a plan of essentially the look and feel and color palette evolving with her station in life. Every chapter she's in a wildly different place. There's a jump between chapter 2 and 3, there's a huge jump between 4 and 5. And so the look continues to evolve, not just with the time period, but also with her station in life, with her success, and with her eventual downfall. So that mapping out of a path, both for her and for Griselda, and for her counterpart June, and the who's a parallel storyline
In the FBI. Yeah.
Yeah, in Centac, yeah. And how those two very disparate worlds will eventually meet in the final episode.
That's so interesting. So the look evolves based on, when things grow more dire for her, when she's,
Yeah,
in prison,
both
in
more
prison.
successful, and it also evolves as she becomes more successful. It's a very warm and inviting look when she has a thriving small business. It becomes a little more lavish and a little more extreme, and pockets of darkness, and also over the top color when she's becoming the godmother of the cocaine trade. And of course, then we have the downward spiral. June's world starts very bleak and contained until she starts to break through the barriers of the world that she's in, which is also a very sexist world of homicide detectives who she's the only one who believes that a woman is responsible for the chaos in Miami at the time. And so as she becomes a little more free and a little more empowered, her look evolves as well. And they essentially meet, in the end, as she's successful in capturing Griselda.
I love that whole idea of the parallel tracks of, of the drug kingpin and the law. And both women really have their own issues that they hit, sexist walls as they travel. It's ironic and beautifully done, and the fact that all of the all of the crafts professionals like yourself were able to match that emotion to a look is fascinating. You don't even think about it, and that's, I guess, the whole idea of what you do is you don't want to think about what you're looking at too much. You want to have everything blend together and be seamless.
Exactly. Yeah, the both like I mentioned before, we want to create this reality. We want you to very quickly be absorbed into it, and then we want you to forget about the craft. So if we're doing our jobs well, if there's an incredible camera move to help accentuate a dramatic point, I don't want anyone saying, "Oh, that was a great camera move." I just want you to be fully absorbed in the performance at that moment. The same with the lighting, with the overall compositions. The idea is that we're focusing the eye, we're curating the world for you, so that you're not taking out of the narrative at any time.
So interesting that if you're doing your job properly, you're invisible, basically.
Basically,
Yeah.
yeah.
How did your lens selection impact the period look, Armando?
Well, we the lenses themselves were just I chose them for a balance of pleasing characteristics and performance under duress, because like I mentioned before, the lighting was going to be very aggressive. In terms of the framing and camera work, it was very much designed around the show being titled Griselda. It's when she's in control, when she's in power, it's very centered compositions, very balanced. The world rotates around her. The people are in the periphery. Everyone else's shot is designed around their power balance to Griselda at any given moment. We also composed in 1:6:6:1, which is a very beautiful Academy aspect ratio from Europe that has been used throughout the years, but is not a common go-to these days, because we wanted a taller composition so we could isolate her in a portrait without having to get into kind of extreme close-up territory.
How closely did you work with your director, Andres Bice, to coordinate that color palette and grain structure and all that? Were you guys pretty much walking in lockstep while doing it?
Yeah, luckily, I think it took like 3 days for Andy and I to be in lockstep and be great friends and collaborators. We talked everything out from day one, and we were constantly inspiring each other, and the conversations were always motivating to do the best that we could do. It was a really wonderful experience and collaboration.
No major disagreements, no swearing and throwing things,
No, no,
walking out.
it was. I mean, I know people just say this all the time, but it was truly joyful to collaborate. It was an incredible experience, and it's not just with Andy, but the whole vibe on the set with these incredibly talented cast from all over the world, from Spain, from Colombia, from Mexico, all coming to Los Angeles, to Hollywood. There was this incredible energy on set, and Sophia was surrounded by these amazing actors, and she had this tireless work ethic and boundless energy, and was completely humble and full of joy, and it inspired everybody to just do the best they could do to make this project successful.
It so helps when you have such a agreeable, dynamic star who's there as a team player in the middle of everything.
Yeah, I mean, she between the hours she spent putting on the prosthetic and the hours she spent on set, because she's in 80% of every shot of the of the show, she was incredible. She was just tireless and really just wanting to put her best foot forward, and for us to make the best possible version of the show.
Armando, did I read that you were using older film stocks sometimes rather than digital?
No, we shot digitally.
It was all digital. Okay.
Yeah, my colorist and I spent a lot of time making the film emulation LUT, And part of that look also had grain and halation built into the look. And so we created a relatively unique workflow where I could actually preview the grain and halation on set while we were shooting. And then that was embedded into the dailies, and it was also handed over to the VFX department. So whenever they were, removing an anachronistic element from the frame, they could also turn on the look of the show, which included texture and halation. And so I didn't want the look and feel of the negative to be a afterthought or a post decision. It was something that we developed throughout pre-production, something that we designed and shot to, and so it was with us from start to finish.
I think that's a real credit, though, to how well you did. Is that I was confused as to whether you were actually working with old film stocks, because it really looks that way.
Well, that again, I don't want people to necessarily question that. It's just it should be invisible once again. Like the idea that this is taking place in 1978 Miami, it should just very quickly become a matter of fact. And
yet you were actually shooting in Los Angeles the whole time.
Yeah, Los Angeles,
which you absolutely cannot tell. Was that ever a challenge? To try to turn Los Angeles into Miami.
Yeah, so I grew up in Miami, and so the Miami of the early 80s that I remember from my childhood doesn't exist anymore. It is a completely different city. It's grown so much. And so even the early conversations about how much second unit we would do in Miami, they quickly faded into the background because we essentially had to create Miami in either Los Angeles or Miami. And so it became more about just being very careful of the lensing, the locations we were choosing. It was tireless amount of location scouting for every, an eighth of a page scene. We definitely took a lot of care to curate the world so that there's times there's things you can't change. The palm trees are too tall and too skinny, and there's hills, and some of the shots still sneak in there. But for the most part, it was not about an absolute reality, but it was about the feeling and the vibe, and making sure that we were staying true to our world.
Does CGI come into play at all? I mean, because you say that, for one thing, the palm trees are too tall and too skinny.
Yeah.
Can you CGI those down?
We did it in terms of palm trees, but one of our VFX producer was excellent, and he and I had a great collaboration as well. And we started talking very early. And one of the things that I was very conscientious of, the kind of light that you have in Miami, and part of the way to recreate that is this harsh sun that's also mixed with heavy voluminous clouds. And so I knew while we were shooting in Long Beach, we would have these incredibly saturated blue skies with not a cloud in sight. And it would essentially give us this color field for him to very easily create a cloud library. So he gathered a library of clouds from South Florida. And then anytime those kind of scenes came up, we would discuss, hey, this is a time for some heavy clouds. I'm going to frame it with an extra amount of headroom. And I could turn them on and off in the color correction, and it completely transforms the image, because you never see clouds like that in Southern California.
It's just fascinating. I mean, everything that you do with your cinematography, you're making me want to, tail a cinematographer on a project and write about it. Terrific, just amazing work. Amazing work on this project, sir. We're actually going to leave things there. All 6 hours of Griselda are streaming on Netflix. Armando Salas, best of luck to you this Emmy season and every season. And thanks for joining us today at Gold Derby.
Thanks for having me.